Hi, it's Victoria, and just wanted to describe an experience I had recently, which led me to start researching and getting interested in 5G, directed energy weapons, also known as Voice of God, also known as LRAD, power meters, coronavirus, the source of coronavirus, and just what is actually going on in the world right now with all this craziness. So I'll talk about my experience and then my findings about it with regards to 5G, do coronavirus, etc. Solutions, what to expect next, and then why it matters. So about a month ago, I posted something controversial on WeChat along the lines of, thank goodness for whistleblowers because it reduces the karmic debt, with a link to an article about the US, UK, and India suing China for suppressing information about the coronavirus. And immediately that week, I started experiencing radiation sickness-like symptoms. So I had a severe headache, heart palpitations, chaotic chi, my entire body was tense and cramped up, and extreme fatigue, although my lungs were just fine. I also heard this beeping sound, like made by a machine of some sort. It sounded like and it would just repeat like that over and over again. So this was something that I had never experienced before, and naturally I wanted to know what it was and why I was experiencing it. So my first thought was maybe it's a side effect of 5G radiation, but 5G hasn't been rolled out in the US yet, and as you can read in the sources, which I'm going to post along with this video publicly on keybase.pub/LICKYVI, and that you can view directly in your browser. Just click raw. And I'll also post all the sources in the description of this video. But you can read there about 5G, which is a microwave of high density, and it has a short range but high intensity. And by density, I mean the amount of radiation that passes through a position in a given time. So that depends on both the power of the signal and the proximity to the source of the signal. So I don't use any 5G devices, and there aren't any 5G towers nearby, and satellites are too far away. So can't be coming from that here. China does have 5G, but that's an ocean away from here, so it wasn't able to reach either from China. So I was able to rule out 5G as the source of the radiation sickness. So maybe it's coming from my power meter, and that's also described in the article called "Can New 5G Technology and Smart Meters Be Used as Weapons?" And yeah, I do have a smart meter right outside of my home. But I don't think that a smart meter would make a beeping sound like that 24 hours a day for 2 whole days. So well, what other things could this have been? It's definitely not coronavirus, because my lungs were just fine, and definitely not flu. So that just left one more option: directed energy weapon. And directed energy weapon is sound wave. And as described by the CEO of LRAD Corporation, Woody Norris, in his February 2004 TED Talk, the question is, where is the sound made? Instead of being made on the face of the cone, it's made at literally billions of little independent points along this narrow column in the air. And so, when I aim it towards you, what you hear is made right next to your ears. Because the sound is made in the air along this column, it does not follow the inverse square law, which says it drops off about 2/3 every time you double the distance. It also works 5 times better underwater. We make a version of this which puts out 155 decibels. Pain is 120. We sell those to the military presently for $70,000, and they're buying them as fast as we can make them. Yeah, that's definitely it. And there have been many people who have been attacked by directed energy weapons lately. Directed energy weapons, they actually evolved from scalar EM technology, which is a Soviet technology during the Cold War that the U.S. has also been developing ever since 1947. As you can read on Tom Bearden's website, also in the sources. So, the people who have been attacked have mainly been scientists, whistleblowers, the disclosure community, blockchain community. There have been, healers and just truth tellers who have died or disappeared, often attributed to suicide or recently coronavirus. Yeah, very suspicious. But not all of them have been killed. That includes Dr. Stephen Geer. And in the article, Geer, Adamiak of CSETI, both struck with cancer, July 1997, he describes, both myself and CSETI research director Sherry Adamiak have been diagnosed with metastatic cancer. Both have appeared rather enigmatically at the same time, a fact which seems like a rather strange coincidence. I have been diagnosed with metastatic malignant melanoma, and another second lesion was removed yesterday, July 2nd, and confirmed to be malignant melanoma. The primary cancer has never been found. However, I am otherwise doing well and hope no further lesions will be found. Sherry has been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer of the right breast, with metastasis to the right axilla. And in his interview by John Noel Bathior around 2005, he explains that basically there is a war going on between those who want to keep us slaves of the elite who control oil, the banks, the pharmaceutical companies, and secret technologies, versus the people who are building and want to disclose these technologies that will liberate us from poverty, disease, climate change, and energy dependence. And he explains that people like Marilyn Monroe, politicians, whistleblowers, and general truth tellers who want to disclose this info either get killed, ridiculed by the media, censored, or otherwise silenced. There's also Patty Greer, who is an excellent scientist, And you gotta wonder, why would anyone want to silence or attack a scientist unless they were doing some really important work? So in the article, Gaia hits filmmaker Patty Geer with an old school weapon, a lawsuit. It mentions, soon after she broke with the company, Geer says, she was attacked by a directed energy weapon after attending Contact in the Desert in Phoenix in May 2017. And more details about this incident and her work are in her interview by You Are Free TV, entitled Dark Circles, the Disclosure Deep State, Directed Energy, or DO Weapons, and Crop Circles. And in it, she also describes an incident where she was hit by a directed energy weapon at Contact in the Desert in 2016, including what the weapon looked like and who was wielding it. She says, the year before, when I was on stage on the David Wilcox panel, I felt like something hit me, like a pulse of energy. And this is 2016. And I was like, okay, I'm totally imagining it. But I did know that there was somebody in the audience, and I could see him close by, and I had already told security the day before that I had an issue, and it was somebody that didn't care for my work getting out, and if I could see him, he's too close, and you better do something. And so, as it turns out, I got hit again. I jumped a second time, and I knew it. I left the stage, and all of a sudden, I saw my psychic friend 4 seats from these people. And right to the other side of this person was another one of my friends, another psychic woman. I went back on stage, and all of a sudden, I see him whisper to the person that he was with something, and then she starts to massage his head, and then he takes a water bottle and starts pouring it. I see this guy and the girl get up and leave. He had a migraine. He couldn't kick it. Then they handed me the mic, and that was deleted because I leaned into the mic and I said, well, 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 isn't this fun? Well, you know what women do? We bring psychics with cameras. We do it differently, and we're all safe. And all of a sudden, the women in the crowd were like, whoa! It was brought out at me that I was there to represent the women. I made some man feel so small that he had to test his effing toy on me, and it looked like a cell phone. It looked like he was holding a black cell phone pointed towards the stage. I think that each year they've been testing different frequencies on a lot of different people. What happened there was, describing a different event, she says, what happened there was some sort of flu-like symptoms that affected every other person. And she concludes, we've got an enemy. So this is also similar to what happened at the blockchain training conference last year in Aurora, Colorado, where a lot of people got food poisoning. I almost got food poisoning there. Because the food, it looked just normal, even up to when I was about to eat it, and only then did I see the part that was raw or undercooked. It was hidden in the catering table. And also what happened at East Denver this year, a whole bunch of people got flu, or flu-like disease. And that's been happening at all sorts of conferences. Including the Society for Scientific Exploration conference in Broomfield, Colorado last year, where I actually felt hit by, I was just nauseous and uncomfortable leaving that conference. It took me a few days to recover, but not serious. It wasn't nearly as serious as this past month. Alright, so directed energy weapons, that's just one of several very powerful and very controversial technologies that have been rolled out recently, including thorium nuclear reactor, which, according to this excellent YouTube video, Thorium Debunk, was actually first studied and built and tested by Admiral Hyman Rickover of the U.S. Navy. and he was the one who built the first nuclear reactor in the Navy. But for some reason, there's this article, scientist behind the Navy's UFO patents has now filed one for a compact fusion reactor, describing how Salvatore Pais is filing a patent for thorium nuclear energy. And it's weird because it used to have a picture of him, but now it's taken down, the picture. And he looks just like the LRAD CEO, who looks just like the director of the Remote Viewing Association, which I'll talk about next. And that person has an accomplice who's a woman, so similar to what Patty Greer saw. Anyways, this article talks about the patent and says, to be frank, we at the War Zone have no idea what is going on here. We have tried to get the Navy to give us some perspective on why these patents were filed, whether they are based on legitimate technology, and why they were ever made public. The Navy remains unwilling to discuss them. At the same time, nearly every physicist we have talked to thinks all of these patents are beyond the realm of known physics and are almost laughable in terms of viability. At the same time, all this is occurring as the Navy, and the Navy alone, out of all of the branches of the U.S. military, continues to discuss the fact that its pilots are encountering unexplained aerial phenomena at an alarming rate. With all this in mind, is the Navy building some sort of incredible craft based on science that remains foreign to the largest scientific community? Did they already do this years ago and are just slowly lifting the veil now? Are they clumsily trying to emulate what their pilots are seeing in the field, but cannot yet fully explain? Could these patents just represent gross mismanagement of resources on the Navy's behalf? Or is this all some sort of elaborate disinformation play by the Navy? One that seems to have emerged right in step with the rise of major peer-state competition from the likes of Russia and China, and the biggest expansion of advanced aerospace development programs in decades. Could be any of those. So another technology is remote viewing, and it's got a similar story to this. It was originally mastered and taught and developed by Ingo Swann. But as he writes in The Real Story of Remote Viewing, an autobiographical memoir, in its refined and developed state, its chief characteristics were twofold: its gradual increase in scope, precision, and accuracy, and its closeness more to general human potential rather than to special things seen as psychic or parapsychological. After 1988, though, the year I retired from active research, what might be called the decomposition of remote viewing began to set in. And so when, in the went public stage, latter-day formats of remote viewing began detaching from tested, demonstrated, and confirmed proficiency and accuracy, the decomposition of remote viewing proceeded apace. And he's gone now. He passed at around 80 years old. But he also described in that autobiography about, just how the alarming amount of, psychics and remote viewers who are no longer here, who are no longer with us. So, what are solutions to directed energy weapons? Well, first of all, the more you allow them to succeed at controlling us, the more they will be used. So, don't let them control you. And second of all, how do you cure the effects of a directed energy weapon attack? Well, what I found was a combination of acupressure, pranayama, yoga, mantra chanting, mudras, and meditation, and definitely rest. That helped. And the main point is to tune into a different frequency, a higher, subtler frequency or consciousness than the sound wave beeping sound. And I mean, it's not hard through meditation, through Kriya Yoga. And you bring Kundalini energy up the spine to the third eye, and down the front, and repeats. And the third eye is not actually in your body, but the seat of the third eye is the pineal gland, and that helps you tune into a higher consciousness. And it withdraws the senses to this, subtler region, and opens the third eye. And then you'll find that you don't notice, and the sound doesn't impact you, and the radiation, the sound waves, the decibels no longer have an effect. And so I did all of this pretty much non-stop for 2 days, and the radiation sound went away. And clearly I'm all better now. So, as for preventing these attacks in the future, well, part of it is just having a solution in the first place. And every time they develop a new weapon, we develop new cures, new solutions. But it's also important not to create more problems, not to become part of the problem. So don't, help perpetuate these, institutions, these vicious cycles, like, various corruption that are unsustainable, because the end result anyways is death. And at some point you gotta wonder, would you rather live and die a slave, or would you rather die and live free? I found that for the case of 5G and power meters, which I believe was the cause of radiation sickness I was experiencing last year around August, that was a lot more prolonged but a lot less severe. There weren't any heart palpitations, but there was still headache and tension, and I don't think there was chaotic chi, but there was definitely fatigue, and that lasted for a month. But I did find that whenever it rained, it would go away. Whenever I showered, or after washing and all my hair is wet, there was no more headache. It went, the effects went away. And pretty soon I was able to figure out the locations in my house, one by my desk where I work on my computer, and one by my plants. And by putting humidifiers there, I found also that allowed me to be able to work there and also protect my plants, although this was after one of them also was already actually impacted and eventually died of it just curled and shriveled up. It had been fine for 7 years, and then all of a sudden it just, it looked like radiation sickness. And I also find that if you just stay away from electronics for a while, that helps the symptoms go away. And I just never use wireless devices and Wi-Fi. Use wired alternatives, like Ethernet and tethering. Yeah, I don't keep my phone on when I'm sleeping. I don't even put it near me, like when I'm using it or sleeping. Turn off all like internet when I'm sleeping as well. Alright, and continue the rest in part 2.